Hello everyone and welcome to part 2 of my series covering my favorite graphic novel of all time, The Dark Knight Returns, with issue 2, The Dark Knight Triumphant. Now, like I just said, this is part 2 to a video that I released just over a week ago, maybe 2 weeks depending on when I get this up. So if you haven't seen that original video, then definitely go watch that before watching this one, or else things just won't make sense. And before we start diving into the story for today, I want to give a quick recap for all the people who've seen part 1 of all of the things that we covered in the last issue, or at least the important stuff. Up until his return in the previous issue, it had been 10 years since Bruce Wayne officially put on the cape as Batman, and as a result, this very powerful, very evil gang called the Mutants have basically ruled Gotham City for the last while. We don't know how long specifically, but a while. We also found out that Harvey Dent, Two-Face, was rehabilitated in Arkham, but upon his release unfortunately relapsed into his life of crime. And at 55 years old, being able to contain the beast inside him no longer, Bruce Wayne officially returns to the fold as the Batman. And his resurgence into the public consciousness officially reawakened the Joker, who had been sitting in a catatonic state in Arkham for the last 10 years. And the conflict between Batman and Two-Face in the first issue of this series showed us that Bruce Wayne needs to be Batman. There's this psychological need in him to be the Batman, just like Harvey Dent could not change who he was, and he returned to being Two-Face. The first issue was a test of Batman's identity, and now it is his strength that will be put to the test in issue 2, The Dark Knight Triumphant. So without further ado, let's get into the story. Our story opens on Commissioner Gordon. He is walking down the street from his apartment, getting groceries for his wife that she forgot to get earlier that day. And as we listen to his thoughts as he gives this internal monologue, we are privy to the thoughts and experiences of a very old, very weathered Commissioner Gordon. He is very bitter and paranoid after 50 years of seeing the absolute worst of humanity. Problem with crime is the more you know, the more nervous it makes you. Me? I can't look at that doorway over there without thinking of the 72 corpses I've found in spots like that. Shot or stabbed or just beaten to death because they were too stupid to keep their distance. Too stupid or too civilized. One's the same as the other in Gotham City. I pass a liquor store, run my eyes over the rigid features of the hunk of metal that used to be a friendly merchant. Wonder how many men he's had to kill just to stay in business. I see a high-priced car gleaming like new in the streetlight, once a symbol of wealth and power, now just another target in a city of victims. I curse Sarah, not meaning it, for her hippie vegetarian recipes and the bean sprouts she forgot to pick up. Then my cigar does its usual and I cough up a load of the brown stuff. I'm amazed as my head goes light and the spots dance in front of me that she convinced me not to smoke in my own home. Then I suck it again. Dying never seemed real to me when I was young. For some reason, I want to see Bruce. Not to talk. I mean, sure to talk. And maybe to drink, even though he seems to have given that up. Suddenly, the hair bristles on the back of my neck. As he's walking down the street, a member of the mutant gang steps into the roadway to face him. He's just a kid, and he points his gun at Gordon. I hear a girlish giggle, and the cold, oiled sound of a gun being cocked behind me. I see the face of a killer, who isn't yet old enough to shave. Immediately, with this gun pointed at him, he thinks of his wife Sarah, pulls out his own gun, and as he says, the rest is easy. We then cut to Carrie Kelly. I don't know if you remember Carrie from the first video that I did. She kind of had a minor role in the first issue, but now she's coming into the forefront. She is in her room putting on a Robin costume. And on the TV, we hear that the Council of Mothers has officially called for the arrest of the Batman. as well as another petition being filed for sanctions against his actions. The mayor is still in consultation over the matter and hasn't decided on anything yet, which is a very common theme with the mayor of Gotham. Crime continues to run rampant in Gotham, and the media is unsure which instances of violence can be blamed on Batman or not, because the media is very desperate to blame something on him. And in other news, as we find out, Commissioner Gordon shot and killed a 17-year-old member of the mutant gang who fired upon him. Carrie's parents, who at this point are completely oblivious to the child that they have, are just sitting in front of the TV complaining about what's happening on the news while offering no suggestions on how anything could be fixed. Meanwhile, Carrie escapes out of the fire escape and begins practicing what I can only describe as parkour. It seems that with the rise of the Batman, she has been inspired to at least help deal with the shady underbelly of Gotham City. Now for more news. The news states that this is no less than the third attempt on Commissioner Gordon's life by the mutant gang at this point. And after this most recent incident, he faces a forced retirement. Self-defense or not, shooting a 17-year-old is not a good look for the police commissioner. And basically, the higher-ups want him out as soon as possible, thinking that with him gone, the mutant crisis will settle itself down. But so far, no announcements have been made as to who the new commissioner will be. And in other news, the 10-month-old heir to a massive fortune is still missing. We're gonna find out what happens to that real quick. As we find out, he was abducted by 3 members of the mutant gang who are holding the child for ransom. However, they are not planning on honoring the deal, and once they receive the ransom money, they are going to kill the child. Is it too early in the video for me to be talking about child murder? It's my channel, I can do what I want. I'm not monetized. Patreon is linked in the description. As they're discussing their plan, they hear the door to the room they're in unlock from the outside. It seems that someone is trying to get in. Not wanting to take any chances, the mutants immediately open fire on the door, which slowly creaks open, revealing a dark, empty hallway. There's a long pause, and suddenly, a bat flies out of the hallway and immediately attacks one of the mutants. As he staggers toward the window, a bat-shaped blade shatters through the window and embeds itself in his hand, forcing him to drop his firearm. His buddy, who I cannot emphasize enough and haven't said it up until this point, has a rail gun, an actual rail gun, yells at his friend to get away from the window as he's about to open fire. However, his friend doesn't hear him in time, and so he fires a volley of bullets through his friend and through the window, which I don't think I need to tell you, kills his friend. After this happens, Batman crashes through the wall behind the mutant with the railgun, and he grabs him as the rubble of the wall crumbles around them. He now has the mutant's gun in hand and the mutant in the other. The final mutant holds a gun to the child's head and threatens to kill him. In response, Batman simply shoots her with the railgun and then catches the baby before it hits the ground. Is it still a baby if it's 10 months? It's still a baby. Yeah, it's still a baby. For those of you who know about Batman at least a little bit, you know that he has a no-kill rule, and I don't think he actually killed the mutant that he fired on. We do see the mutant like hit the wall, and we see like blood on the wall behind them, but after this incident, he still has that principle of not killing people. Like, he still says he hasn't violated that rule. So I don't think that the mutant he shot actually died. I think he just shot her in like a non-lethal place in order to defuse the situation. When I first read this comic, I thought she died, but context clues later lead me to believe that he hasn't killed anyone up until this point, so I don't think that the mutant actually died in the exchange. Meanwhile, surprise, the news still hates Batman. On the news, people of all sorts of opinions are being interviewed on the subject of the Batman. Some people think he needs to be arrested immediately. Others are surprised that there isn't an army of Batmen out there at this point. And the person who's interviewing all these people asks a question of the psychiatrist from issue 1, Dr. Wolper. He is wondering why, if Batman is responsible for causing crime, as what Dr. Wolper believes, then how come the crime rate in Gotham has dipped since his return? His reply is that this is the result of a temporary dip as a result of Batman, striking at the heart of crime. However, this is merely just the eye of the storm. He emphasizes once again that he views Batman as a sort of social disease who is capable of corrupting the youth of today. Kind of sounds like how people treat video games, or at least used to. I feel like people have come around on video games by this point. Maybe. Most people.
Video games cause violence. I'm 80.
The next interview is with a man named Chuck Brick, who is the media advisor to the president. Yes, that one, the President of the United States. In case you've forgotten at this point, this story takes place during the Cold War, and so Chuck Brick is the media advisor to President Ronald Reagan. Chuck says that President Reagan will issue a statement on what he thinks of the Batman in the future, but at this point his chief concern is the immediate threat of the Soviets. And right now he thinks the whole thing at this point might just blow over. In fact, he lets slip that he personally believes that this is probably just a media hoax in order to boost ratings on news channels in Gotham. And finally, they interview Lana Lang, who is the managing editor of the Daily Planet, a person who up until this point has been a very vocal supporter of the Batman. And she expresses how Batman to her symbolizes someone who is finally willing to stand up to the tyranny of crime that Gotham lives under. And he is kind of symbolic of the common man's urge to resist. Meanwhile, we see that Carrie is continuing to practice her acrobatics and is in fact getting very good at it. We now cut to an interrogation scene. Batman is interrogating the mutant who was holding that huge railgun that he had apprehended just earlier. We don't see what's happening at this point, but we know that the mutant's hands and feet are bound and Batman's hand is covering his eyes.
Do you know who I am, punk?
What?
I'm the worst nightmare you ever had. Kind that make you wake up screaming for your mother. Where am I? You got a mother, don't you? Every punk should have a mother.
Can't see, man. What's on my face?
Quite an arsenal you and your buddies had. The 45 was nothing special, of course.
I think I'm bleeding, man. I need a doctor.
But that Smith & Wesson 41 your pal was carrying. You know which pal. The one you perforated? That pistol was odd, especially since it was adapted for a silencer. You just don't run across that, not outside of military intelligence. But that M60 of yours, that's combat weaponry. Same kind another member of your gang tried to use on Jim Gordon. So fill me in, punk. The mutants have a wholesale deal with the army? You've got a lot of teeth left. And I haven't even touched your tongue.
Solid, man, I'll tell you. Deal is, no cops, man, and I walk. What do you say?
I don't think you understand the situation. You're not in a position to negotiate. Let me show you.
Batman lifts his hand off of the mutant's face to reveal that they are both suspended upside down from the tallest building in Gotham.
It was tough work, carrying 220 pounds of sociopath to the top of Gotham Towers, the highest spot in the city. The scream alone was worth it.
While this is a really cool scene that I thoroughly enjoyed when I first read this book, it also tells us something important, and that is that the mutants are somehow being supplied weapons by the military. We also see after this that Carrie has officially started fighting crime on her own. And by that I mean she goes up to a well-known con artist and lights a firecracker in his pocket. But hey, it's still something. And after this, we see an instance of something that we'll see more of in this issue and in subsequent issues, and that is where we are shown the life of an individual. We witness a story that we will later hear on the news, but from the perspective of someone who was there, either the victim or the perpetrator or a bystander, whatever the case may be. It's someone's entire story summed up in a single page, which I think is really cool. Her name is Margaret. She's a waitress getting on the subway after a very long shift at work. Her legs are killing her, partly because of the long day she's had, but also partly because she is in desperate need of a surgery that she can't afford. She has no insurance, and there are 2 payments due on one of her child's braces, and the electric company is about to shut off the power to her house, even though winter is just around the corner. Despite all of this, she smiles and reaches into her purse to feel the cold metal of an art set that she bought for one of her sons. Some rich drunk guy had accidentally left $10 at his table at the restaurant, and so she took that money, and rather than spending it on herself and her leg, she spends it on an art set for her son because he is a very promising artist. His teacher says that he's really talented, and so she wanted to give him something to help him pursue his talent more. Suddenly, while she's on the subway, 2 members of the mutant gang grab her purse and yank it away from her. She begs them to give it back, but one of the mutants holds her back while the other rifles through the contents of her purse. Surprisingly, they give her the purse back. She reaches into it and still feels the art set inside the purse. She begins crying in relief that it's still there. She has no money, but she has that art set. And something else in her purse that she didn't feel before. Something heavy and round. And as we find out on the news later, that object was placed there by the mutants, and it was a bomb. The woman was killed in the blast. We then cut to a shot of Batman in a dark room. He is holding the body of a United States general. He's wrapped in the American flag with a smoking pistol hanging from his hand. As we find out later, this general's insurance company wouldn't pay for a treatment for his wife, who was dying of Hodgkin's disease, which I haven't looked this up, but I'm pretty sure is a type of cancer. I'm pretty sure of that. I'm sure me editing will put information somewhere around the screen about that. And we piece together from elements of his story that he made enough money to pay for the treatment by selling military weapons to the mutants. And now, confronted by Batman on the damage that he's done, he takes his own life. The general's record is an anthem of orders barked between deafening explosions, of a steely, reassuring voice above the cries of wounded men. An anthem shattered into discord in its last few notes by misappropriated weapons sold to the mutants. I almost asked him why. Meanwhile, Carrie overhears a conversation between 3 mutants. Apparently, there's about to be a meeting at the dump. The mutant leader will be there, and he's talking about a war. Batman breaks into the warehouse where all the mutant weapons are stashed to reveal an arsenal capable of toppling a small government. And he says if it's a war that they want, then he's got just the thing. Meanwhile, the mayor and police media director Lewis Gallagher are in a steam room talking about the conundrum of who they should hire as the new police commissioner. The mayor is very indecisive and overall just a pushover, and so he kind of allows Gallagher to influence his actions and decisions to the point where he appoints Gallagher to the task of appointing a new commissioner. The mayor in Gotham is just absolutely useless to a comedic level. And as it turns out, Gallagher already has someone in mind. someone who has a very impressive record and, more importantly, is very anti-Batman. Speaking of Batman, he is now in the driver's seat. Alfred calls him, noticing that his signal is coming from the inside of a very familiar vehicle. He says he's taking her out for a spin, and that the engine responds to his commands as if it were only yesterday. And in the news, the mayor announces the new commissioner of Gotham City and Jim Gordon's replacement, Captain Ellen Yindel. She marks the youngest person to ever hold that station in Gotham City, as well as the first woman commissioner. Quite the girl boss, as we're gonna see. And her first act as commissioner will be to issue an arrest warrant for the Batman. Meanwhile, Gordon, in his age, begins grumbling about the absurdity of a woman being in his job. Batman, now arriving at the dump, cuts the engine and listens quietly as the leader of the mutants gives his big speech. He is a very large, muscular man with teeth filed into razor blades and these very sharp blade-like piercings all over his body. And he's surrounded by an army of mutants, all wielding these high-caliber, military-grade weapons. And he's rallying all of his troops to storm Gotham City, to storm police headquarters, kill everyone in sight, bring him the head of Commissioner Gordon. And it's at this point that Batman makes his presence known. He fires a blast that explodes right over the head of the mutant leader. He then rolls onto the scene in a vehicle that I can only describe as the coolest tank that I have ever seen. He says, as he drives up in his head, that he modified this vehicle 15 years ago when riots broke out all over Gotham. The Batmobile. That's what you called it, Dick. Kinda name a kid would come up with. His voice is broadcast out of the tank with very simple, very clear instructions. Surrender or be destroyed. Not even waiting for an answer, the mutants immediately open fire on the Batmobile with guns, RPGs, missiles, all kinds of stuff. But the Batmobile doesn't even budge. As Batman says, the only thing that could cut through the hull of this beast is not from this world.
3 guesses what that is. Probably Superman.
The Batmobile returns fire to even greater effect. He's firing rubber bullets, capable of disabling all of the mutants, but not killing them. Carrie Kelly is there in the dump to witness all of this unfolding. And it is only now, at this point, that her parents even notice that she's gone. In their words, they say, "Hey, didn't we have a kid?" Carrie's parents are the worst. As we'll see later in the story, Batman... I feel like this is a very common thread with all of the Robins that Batman has had in the past, but Carrie comes to view him as a father figure, the kind that she never really had in her life. The mutant leader, being the last one standing, calls Batman out and challenges him to a fight. As he watches this snarling beast of a man, he realizes that this mutant leader is unlike anything he's ever faced before. He is of a brand new form of evil. He has no conscience. He is motivated only by bloodlust, and unlike Batman, he is in the prime of his life. Batman, in this moment, does consider breaking his one rule. As he sees it, the only viable way of ending the threat of the mutants and this monster of a leader is to put him down. Except for one thing that stops him. He's young and quite well built, and he honestly doesn't know if he could beat the mutant leader in a fight at his age. He powers off all the weapons to the Batmobile. Driven by curiosity, he has to know if he's even capable of tackling this new generation of monsters. Alfred begs Bruce to reconsider, but he doesn't listen. Batman exits the Batmobile and immediately lunges at the mutant leader. He shoves garbage in the mutant leader's face and forces it down his throat. Immediately afterwards, he delivers a very powerful blow to the mutant leader's chest. But unfortunately, The upper hand he has is very temporary. The mutant's claw-like nails dig into Batman's back, tearing away his flesh. His razor-sharp teeth bite down into Batman's neck right here. Technically it's the traps, but there's no cool and dramatic way to say traps. The trapezius. Batman attempts to kick the mutant leader's chest, but he's too slow and the mutant easily blocks it. Returning fire, the mutant fires off a kick of his own, which collides with Bruce and shatters his midsection. Shatters a bone in his midsection. Somewhere. Something breaks. He picks Batman up and throws him into a pile of garbage. At this point, so early in the fight, Batman is already starting to black out and lose consciousness, but he quickly regains consciousness and snaps out of it. Quickly assessing his body, he determines that there are no broken ribs and no internal bleeding. He feigns weakness, luring the mutant leader in closer and closer. Once he decides that the mutant is close enough, he lashes out with his fist, which collides with the mutant leader's face. His nose shatters under the impact, but his neck and head don't budge. It is here that the mutant leader does nothing and lets Batman give him all he's got. The leader begins to mock him, asking if the old man is getting tired. To shut him up, Batman delivers a powerful jab to the mutant's neck. In response, the mutant leader goes off. He begins raining down blows on Batman's face and his head. He grabs Batman's arm and shatters it with his hands. All the while, Batman is desperately trying not to go into shock. And now the mutant leader has a crowbar and he's relentlessly beating Batman over the head with it. And in this moment, barely conscious, he starts to wish that Robin were here. Whenever he used to be in a situation like this, Dick Grayson was always there to help him and get him out of it. And at that exact moment, Carrie decides to run at the mutant leader and try and get him off Batman. She jumps on the mutant leader, temporarily throwing him off balance. Batman looks up, and for a moment he sees Dick Grayson. It's like it's the good old days again. The mutant grabs a hold of Carrie, but Batman throws a smoke bomb that explodes directly in the mutant leader's face, blinding him for a moment. And after that, with Carrie Kelly at his side, he passes out, but he's still alive. She drags his limp body to the Batmobile, where Alfred, broadcast over the intercom, I assume, thanks her and tells her to run along. We then cut to a conversation at the White House between President Ronald Reagan and Superman. Reagan wants him to go to Gotham City and deal with the ruckus that has been created by Batman's return. Nothing violent, he's just hoping that Superman, as an old friend, will be able to talk him down. Superman doesn't think Batman will go for it, but he's willing to give it a try. And on the news, we hear that 83 wounded members of the mutant gang were found at the dump, and that them and their leader have been arrested. And he brags to all the news outlets on how he defeated Batman in combat. And we now cut to the Batmobile that is being piloted either automatically or being piloted remotely by Alfred, as Batman lays barely alive on a stretcher. Carrie worries that the vehicle is bouncing around too much for such a wounded Batman, but he tells her that the stretcher is placed on a gyroscope so that it always stays level no matter how rough the terrain gets. Which is really cool. It's just a little detail added into the story, and I just think it's really cool. There's a lot of little details that make this world feel very fleshed out. And then Carrie sets Batman's broken arm into a splint. And after the Batmobile completes a scan of him, Alfred determines that he has a lot of internal bleeding, just a lot of it. Batman, seeing all that Carrie has done for him, asks her name, and she tells him her name is Carrie Kelly, but after a moment she straightens and says that her name is Robin, to which Batman smiles and says that his name is Bruce. Alfred tells him to save his energy. They'll be at the hospital soon. Bruce refuses and tells him no hospitals, and he tells Alfred to take them to the cave, and Robin comes with them. Meanwhile, the psychiatrist Dr. Wolper is having a conversation with the chief administrator at Arkham's home for the emotionally troubled. He is arguing for the controlled release of another inmate, but under much stricter supervision than Harvey was. He's been having lots of conversations with this patient, and he believes that some interaction with the outside world would be very good for him. And, of course, this inmate that he's talking about is the Joker. I don't think it's good to... The whole world should have a restraining order on the Joker. The Joker, on cue, turns on the waterworks. He starts moaning about how he is a miserable person and is undeserving of a second chance, which I agree, personally. This, of course, is a play on Wolper's ego. This is very obviously a manipulation tactic by the Joker. He now has this other pitiful individual like Harvey was for him to miraculously heal with his psychiatric abilities. And after the PR disaster that Harvey Dent was, Wolper is probably desperate for some good press. Meanwhile, the Batmobile is driving directly towards the side of a cliff. It's only a hologram. It's only a hologram. The Batmobile passes right through the cliffside and into the Batcave. Bruce stumbles out of the vehicle, ripping off the tattered remains of his costume. He stumbles away from Carrie and Alfred and into a dark branch of the cave. Whatever's going to happen here, he has to do alone. I leave them behind me. I leave it all behind me. I go to the dark place where I first met you, before my parents died, before I learned what I am. I'm dying, but I can't die. I'm not finished yet, and you're not finished with me. Then, something shuffles, out of sight. Something sucks the stale air and hisses, gliding with ancient grace, eyes gleaming, untouched by love or joy or sorrow, breath hot with the taste of fallen foes, the stench of dead things, damned things, surely the fiercest survivor, the purest warrior, glaring, hating, claiming me as your own. Here in the Batcave, nearly dead, he goes to the dark place and calls upon that beast once again to save him. It's a really powerful scene. Even in the illustrations, the line between Bruce and this beast, this giant bat, are starting to blur. No longer is his face like reluctant to accept the help of this creature. He is now glaring and hating, just as the bat is glaring and hating. They both have the same look in their eyes. They're both not done, and they are both out for blood. And now some more news. The mutants have officially released a statement regarding their leader. Without getting into the graphic specifics of what they said, they're basically gonna come for their leader and kill anyone who gets in their way, as well as do other violent, unspeakable things. In response to this, Gordon has placed himself and his men on 24-hour alert. The mayor is now on the offensive. He blames Commissioner Gordon and he blames Batman for the mutant crisis that they are dealing with. This newfound confidence is probably inspired by the fact that the Gallagher is immediately behind him, feeding him these words. He says that he himself will negotiate a settlement with the mutant leader, not realizing that the mutant leader is a sadist with no love for anything except violence. We then get another instance of what we saw before of a person's life story being told in one page. His name is Arnold Crimp, and he is a very mentally unwell person. I don't want to call him a crazy person because there's probably like a whole life's journey of context that made him the way he is, but he is a very crazed conspiracy theory person. He's been listening to Father Don's words on TV, how if you play the track Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin backwards, there is a hidden prayer to Satan in the lyrics. to make sure that he was right, he stole the track and played it backwards 47 times until he was sure that he heard it. And it seems that when he was confident enough with those findings, he went to the record store that he worked at to tell one of his female co-workers about it. But she obviously noticed that he was crazy. Outraged, he destroys the record in front of her, and she calls their manager, who immediately throws him out and fires him. Probably not in that order. He probably fired and then threw him out. And now his crazed crusade with Led Zeppelin and Satan have led him here to the entrance of an adult theater for adult films. Is that a real thing? The fact that that would ever exist is so weird to me. He's here at this theater and he has a gun in his coat. He's so confident that he heard this message to Satan in the lyrics of Stairway to Heaven, and that specific message is in fact the title of the film that's being shown tonight. He walks into the theater and pulls out his gun. The news later reports that 3 were slain in a Batman-inspired attack on an adult theater. The main purpose of this story is, well, first of all, to show just how bad things are getting in Gotham, but also to show that the media is desperate to take any instance of violence at all and blame it on the actions of the Batman, even though we as the reader know that Arnold has his own had his own agenda. Even though it was misplaced, he wasn't thinking of Batman when he did it. And we now cut to a different story, the story of Iron Man Vasquez, a wrestler. He's crying on the floor as he has just bludgeoned a man to death. As he sits there, he recalls the last time that he ever felt something, and that was when he lost to his opponent in the very first round. This was his last fight. He continues crying and realizes that he's reading the story of a man who dresses like a bat and makes all the wrongs in the world right. The next time Iron Man Vasquez feels something, he's dressed like a bat and holding a gun, but he's just been shot. The news headline is "Crazed Would-Be Killer Dresses as Batman." And now we see the story of a baker owner who goes by the name Peppy. As a devout Catholic, he can't say that he approves of the methods of the Batman that he sees on TV, at least not out loud. It is in this moment that he hears a woman scream just outside his shop. Instead of being afraid, he grabs a rolling pin and runs outside. His blood begins to boil thinking about the crime that goes on in this neighborhood, about the alarm system he had to buy for the shop that cost 2 months' wages, and about the iron bars on his windows that make his beautiful shop look like a prison. Peppy attacks the mugger, who runs in fear. No one is injured enough to make the news. And now Commissioner Gordon is escorting the mayor through the room of holding cells, all holding the 83 arrested mutants. They are heading towards the cell that contains their leader.
I'd expect them to be screaming and fighting, but they stand like a captive army. I'd like to think they're crazy, but here I am, walking the mayor to meet their leader, with all the ceremony of a military conference. The cell doors open. The air goes thick. I feel the mayor shudder, in time with me. I ask him one more time if he's sure he wants to go in alone. He gurgles and nods. I don't know if I'd call it courage.
The mayor looks back one last time before the door closes, and Gordon lights a cigar outside.
I hear a nervous giggle and an animal growl. I hear handcuff links snap. I see something I'll take to my grave. Some idiot stops me from doing the obvious thing.
Gordon bursts into the room. The walls are covered in blood. He pulls his gun ready to shoot the mutant leader, but an officer bursts in and stops him. And on the news, our suspicions are confirmed. The mayor of Gotham has been murdered. Specifically, the mutant leader ripped out the mare's throat with his teeth. In the Batcave, Carrie is staring at a glass display case. That display case contains the original Robin suit, the one that Dick Grayson wore and then was passed to Jason Todd. Bruce returns from the dark place from his communion with the Beast, and Carrie immediately runs up and embraces him, glad to see he's alive and full of energy again. And in world news, Soviet destroyers have been sighted off the island of Corto Maltese. Now, Corto Maltese is a fictional island that originally came from the Batman mythos, possibly this comic, but maybe before, I don't actually know. This fictional island is located off the coast of South America somewhere. So this is kind of setting up almost like a faux Cuban Missile Crisis. Had the Cuban Missile Crisis even happened at this point? I don't think so, actually. The main takeaway is that Soviet destroyers are in South America, and that's probably bad for America. And the formerly deputy mayor, now Mayor Stevenson, issues a statement. He says he is still open to negotiation with the mutants, but all the while Gallagher is standing over his shoulder behind him. It appears that one weak-willed puppet has been exchanged for another. In the Batcave, Alfred is begging Bruce not to bring Carrie into this fight. Bruce is patching up his wounds, and he attaches this metal brace to his arm. It's unclear what this is for. Well, it's obviously to keep his arm intact, but I do think it also is meant to provide extra strength. I don't actually know that, but I feel like that's something that he would do. The key to ending the war with the mutants is their leader, Bruce says. The mutants practically worship the man, and so if he can defeat the leader, then the mutants should fall apart completely. Desperate to not involve Carrie at all, Alfred reminds Bruce of what happened to Jason, to which he says this: "I will never forget Jason. He was a good soldier. He honored me. But the war goes on." The next few pages of the comic cut between two different stories, so I'm just gonna tell one story at a time. Commissioner Gordon is standing in his office, and Captain Ellen Yindel, his replacement, walks in. She asks if there's anything that she can do to help at this point, to which Commissioner Gordon says there's nothing to do but wait at this point, but she is welcome to sit down. She tells Gordon that she's always admired him and always disliked Gallagher, even though he's the one who installed her in this new position. Gordon says that the decision doesn't surprise him at all given Yindel's record, to which she says that Gallagher didn't really read her record at all. He only just cared how she felt on the position of the Batman. To which Gordon tries to change the subject. He doesn't want to discuss Batman with her. Obviously because he's pro-Batman, because he knows him and likes him, and Yindel doesn't. Yindel begins pressing the matter. She's always admired Gordon, but was very surprised at how pro-Batman he was. How can someone of such rapport as Gordon support this vigilante? To which Gordon responds with a story of his own. "I'm sure you've heard old fossils like me talk about Pearl Harbor. Fact is, we mostly lie about it. We make it sound like we all leapt to our feet and went after the Axis on the spot. Hell, we were scared. Rumors were flying. We thought the Japanese had taken California. We didn't even have an army. So there we were, lying in bed, pulling the sheets over our heads. And then there was Roosevelt, on the radio, strong and sure, taking fear and turning it into a fighting spirit. Almost overnight, we had our army. We won the war. Since then, presidents have come and gone, each one seeming smaller and weaker. Best of them like faint echoes of Roosevelt. A few years back, I was reading a news magazine. A lot of people with a lot of evidence said that Roosevelt knew Pearl Harbor was going to be attacked, and that he let it happen. Wasn't proven, things like that never are. I couldn't stop thinking how horrible that would be, and how Pearl was what got us off our duffs in time to stop the Axis.
A lot of innocent men died, but we won the war. It bounced back and forth in my head until I realized I couldn't judge it. It was too big. He was too big. I don't see what this has to do with a vigilante. Maybe you will.
After this, an officer bursts into Gordon's office to tell him about some very unusual activity from the mutants. You see, the whole time this was happening, Batman had given Carrie an assignment. He said her training begins tomorrow, but he has plans for her today. If she alters the plan or deviates from it in any way, she's fired. There's no room for error, and so there's no room for deviation. Carrie disguised herself as one of the mutants and began spreading the word to the mutant gang throughout the city. There's supposed to be a meeting tonight at the Pipe by the West River. Attendance is mandatory. From the roof of Gotham Police headquarters, Gordon looks out and sees thousands of mutants have gathered by the pipe. Batman tells him that they're there because he wants them there. The only way to defeat the mutants for good is to defeat and humiliate their leader. It is then that Batman asks Gordon for one last favor as an old friend. Gordon walks into the prison block where the mutant leader is being held. The mutant leader taunts him, saying, "Come to say hello, old man." But Gordon simply responds, "No, I came to say goodbye." Gordon exits the room, turns the lights to his cell block off, and the door to his cell opens. The mutant escapes through a vent and crawls through it until he reaches the pipe. And at the end of the pipe, Batman is waiting for him. The two men fly out of the pipe and into a puddle of mud. That doesn't do it justice. It's not just a small puddle. It's like a hole of mud, like a big thing. The mutant resurfaces and screams and begins lashing out. He yells about how he will kill Batman and how he will show him who truly rules Gotham City, to which Batman slowly and calmly resurfaces and simply says, "Okay, boy, show me." The mutant is strong, but quite dumb. Batman let his ego take over in the first fight, but now he is cold and calculating. He's fighting a lot smarter, and here in the mud, the mutant leader's a lot slower. He lashes out, but Batman easily evades him. Batman lands a jab right above the mutant leader's eye and cuts just deep enough so that it will start bleeding into his eyes, blinding him. He's no longer trying to fight like a young man anymore. He's fighting his age, very cold and very precise. As the blood hit the mutant leader's eyes, he throws mud into his face to further blind him. Enraged, the mutant leader charges, but Batman easily sidesteps and delivers a jab to a nerve bundle in the mutant leader's arm, which immediately paralyzes that arm. He has begun systematically taking the mutant leader apart. However, he still has one working arm, and he uses that to deliver a devastating haymaker to the side of Batman's head, followed immediately by another blow to the face. As the blows continue, Batman begins to black out again, just like in the first fight. Realizing that he can't take much more of this, he lashes out again and paralyzes the mutant's other arm. And before the mutant leader can go for his throat, he grabs him and drags both of them into the mud. "You don't get it, boy. This isn't a mud hole." He grabs the mutant leader's leg. It's an operating table. With a powerful crack, Batman shatters the mutant leader's leg. "And I'm the surgeon." The mutants all gather around the mud hole in the thousands, watching as Batman thoroughly and systematically breaks their leader. In his mind, Batman says that something tells him to stop with the leg, but he doesn't listen to it. Batman stands over the mangled body of the mutant leader and glares at the army that stares back at him. And now, the mutants, as a gang, are officially dead. A former mutant now talks to reporters, wearing the bat symbol on his face. In his own words, the mutants are over, and that the future of Gotham City belongs to the Batman. This, of course, is used as ammunition by Dr. Wolper to say that Batman is corrupting the youth of Gotham. Another person is interviewed on the current condition of the mutant leader. Once he's mobile again, they will officially see if he is mentally fit to even stand trial. The same guy interviewed before with the bat symbol on his face says that the sons of Batman are here to act, not to talk, and that Gotham's underworld is about to enter hell. And Lana Lang is now on the news to keep defending Batman. She says that when an army of psychopaths suddenly turns on the criminals of Gotham's underworld, the Batman can't be entirely blamed for that. And Chuck Brick says that the president is very concerned about what is going on in Gotham. Very concerned. But he is going to leave the putting out of the fires up to the mayor of Gotham City. Gordon, of course, offers no comment. Speaking of Gordon, his retirement has finally come. He grabs all of his things from his office and hands in his badge and his gun. And while he imagines that he'll see Bruce Wayne again, he doubts that he'll ever see Batman again. Now that he's retired, he's out of the picture. And now that he is retired, he knows that Bruce's time as the Batman is finished, but he knows that he can't tell him that. Now that he's gone, they'll go after him now. Meanwhile, he is reflecting on his secret. The secret as to how, after 50 years of service, he can just leave it all behind with no regrets. And the simple answer is the same reason that he was able to fire on that 17-year-old mutant who attacked him on the streets. The secret comes from the very beginning of this issue. He thinks of Sarah, he thinks of his wife, and the rest is easy. Meanwhile, Bruce is staring out of the window of his mansion, staring at the moon. He smiles a very unsettling, very menacing smile. The wind rises, tearing dead leaves free. Frogs croak like a cartoon car alarm. Crickets pick up the chorus. A wolf howls. I know how he feels. And that is the end of issue 2 of The Dark Knight Returns, The Dark Knight Triumphant. I like this issue, especially as a follow-up to the previous issue, because in the first issue, in Dark Knight Returns, he was dealing with the crisis of identity. Can he just be Bruce Wayne, or does he have to be the Batman? And he realized that Batman is who he is, and he has to embrace that. And here in this issue, he is given a trial of strength. Can he fight like he did decades ago as a younger man? Can he fight like a young man, or does his strength have to evolve now that he is a lot older? The reason that Batman failed in his first fight against the mutant leader was because he tried to fight like a young man. He tried to fight like he was an equal to the mutant leader when that wasn't the case. His ego got in the way, and it nearly cost him his life. He exceeded by accepting the fact that he couldn't fight as a young man, and instead fought with strategy and intelligence. If Batman is going to be effective in this new world and going forward into subsequent issues, then he has to play a completely different game than what he used to play. And this is now the end of Gordon's story. In addition to fighting crime and the countless array of evils of Gotham City, Batman will also have to contend with the police, who now have nothing holding them back from hunting him down. We will see Gordon in subsequent issues, but his time as the commissioner is over. And now the mutant gang is gone. We'll see what happens to the members in subsequent issues, but for now we know that some have gone to form what we now know as the Sons of Batman, or a vigilante group inspired by Batman who is going into the streets to deal with crime. And now Superman is also on his way to Gotham to put an end to Batman's story as well. And all of this will come to a head in the next issue that we're going to cover, Hunt the Dark Knight. But with that, we've come to the end of this video. So, thank you for watching. Sorry that this video comes a little bit late. I have been in the process of going on vacation. I'm at my old home in Alberta now. I'm here for about a week, maybe more. as of recording this video, and then I will be back to the apartment, back to the setup that you are all more familiar with. So that's why I was late in getting this up. I was busy flying down here and getting settled. So hope you enjoy this setup. I'll probably record at least one more video while I'm here. So I hope this was enjoyable, and I hope you like this makeshift setup in my childhood room. This has been my bedroom for the past, like, I want to say close to 10 years. This has been my bedroom for like a decade. So yeah, it's kind of cool being back, but I'll be going back to the apartment in a bit. Also, thank you to the patrons. Thank you all so much for supporting me and my content. RD, Sean, Snowy, it means the world that you would help me to kind of try and reach this goal of being a content creator like this more regularly. And if you also want to support this journey in exchange for benefits that are outlined on my Patreon, it's all linked in the description below. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it. We are on the road to 400 subs, so hey, if you enjoyed this video, maybe subscribe and enjoy some of the other videos that I've made in the past. But yeah, like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you enjoy all of the videos that I've been making as of late, and I will be back with the 3rd issue, Hunt the Dark Knight, hopefully next week. My schedule is a little bit crazy because I'm at home and I'm using this makeshift setup. So I hope this was good, and I hope you enjoyed. And if you stuck around this long, thank you so much for watching. And I hope that I hope that you enjoyed this video. And I'll see you next week for the next episode. I hope you're ready for the next installment of this series, because I know that I am. And cut.